period with Christy Kirkup from the Globe and Mail.
Good morning. Just on another topic on Afghanistan again. Your government has been advising Canadians and Afghan refugees to find a safe place to hide from the Taliban as they try to escape. Meantime, Canadian veterans who have been trying to help and have been pushing for expedited visas are now telling people to hide again and come up with rescue plans. So why isn't your government being proactive about helping those left behind in Afghanistan get to other countries like Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Pakistan?
We are absolutely actively working with regional partners to counter the extraordinarily difficult situation that so many Afghan nationals are going through right now. We see the news every night as Canadians and feel such deep sorrow and heartbreak and concern for those folks who've been there alongside Canadians fighting for a better future in Afghanistan for so many years. We need to continue to do more. And even as this temporary air bridge ends with the withdrawal of American and allied troops, we continue to work with regional partners. We continue to do everything we can and will continue to do everything we can to make sure that people who have processes with Canada, who have documentation for Canada, who've been engaging with Canada these past months, are able to come to Canada. We will continue to work day in and day out to get them to safety. Okay.
And Prime Minister, just on these Afghanistan evacuations, if you were to have a do-over moment, to do something differently, what would you do?
I think allied forces, Canadians, Americans, and others, I think politicians and leaders around the world, I think Afghans themselves were surprised at just how fast the Taliban were able to take over in Afghanistan. Over the past number of months, we have been working to get as many people out as possible, but I think a lot of people on the ground and around the world thought there would be more time. We accelerated our processes over the past number of weeks and months. We did everything we could, but of course it got even more intense, more quickly than everyone expected. And I think it is important to thank the Canadian Armed Forces members, the diplomats, the consular officials who've been working so unbelievably hard, as they have many times in the past, whether it was getting Canadians home to Canada in the beginning of this pandemic, or rapidly bringing over tens of thousands of Syrian refugees in 2015 and 2016. Canadians continue to step up, especially right across the country, to welcome people fleeing violence and terror into our country, into their new country, into their new homes.
Next question. Abigail Beeman, Global News. You talk about working with regional partners. I'm wondering, in order to help bring Afghans to Canada who went to those neighboring states, are you planning to restaff embassies that went to skeleton staffing during COVID? And what kind of other supports would you be sending there, military or otherwise?
We know now with the end of this temporary air bridge, it is going to be more and more important to be working closely with regional partners on getting people to safety. We are working with various countries around the globe, specifically around the region, to ensure that people bearing Canadian documentation or who are working with IRCC on their immigration status to Canada be expedited, be welcomed, be treated extremely well so we can get them to Canada. In a situation like this, so many countries in the region are worried about the refugee crisis, worried about long-term camps being set up and the border countries around Afghanistan and other parts of the region. Canada, by being so generous, by Canadians, by being so solid about welcoming Afghans to Canada in the tens of thousands in the coming months, can tell those countries, look, anyone who has Canadian documentation, expedite them, we'll take them, we'll process them quickly. And that will help at getting people who Canada owes a duty of care to out to safety and here to Canada.
Last night, Aaron O'Toole said if he were prime minister, he would, quote, provide political and material support to Afghans resisting the Taliban occupation. Is that something that you would be prepared to do? And what kind of material support do you think is appropriate?
We're going to continue to work with the international community on ensuring a stronger future for Afghanistan, on demonstrating and putting pressure on the Taliban to allow people to leave, to respect human rights, to do more to protect vulnerable Afghans, particularly women and girls who've seen significant progress over the past number of years. At the same time, Aaron O'Toole is promising to end the immigration program responsible for bringing over tens of thousands of Syrian refugees, and the very program we're using to welcome in the future tens of thousands of Afghan refugees. So Aaron O'Toole is talking about doing more to help in Afghanistan, but not to being generous the way Canada has always been with government-sponsored refugees. I think people can read through the lines and understand what his perspective is on that for real. Okay.
Expand a little bit on what you meant when you said you could read through the lines about what Mr. O'Toole really believes. And to my question, we're hearing reports about Canadian citizens in Afghanistan who feel particularly abandoned by your government. Will you prioritize their airlift or getting them out of Afghanistan now that resources are becoming scarce and it's becoming so much harder now over refugee application?
I think a lot of Canadians can't help but reflect on this situation in this election when we are pledging to welcome tens of thousands of Afghan refugees fleeing terrible violence to what we lived through in 2015, when the Conservative government of the time was not stepping up to welcome Syrian refugees. And we find ourselves today in a Syrian restaurant when we as a government pushed back on the Conservatives because we knew that Canadians wanted to do more, wanted to welcome people fleeing hardship and violence and civil war. And over the past 6 years, those Syrian Canadians have been extraordinary in contributing to their communities and contributing to this country and showing the world as well what real leadership and real generosity looks like. And now Aaron O'Toole is promising to end the very program that brought in tens of thousands of Syrian refugees, the very program we're using to bring in tens of thousands of Afghans fleeing to Canada. That doesn't make sense. And our priority has been from the very beginning and will always be getting Canadians to safety. Yes, there are thousands of Afghans to whom we owe a duty of care, and we are doing tremendous things to get them to safety as well. But our first priority has to be and will always be getting Canadians to safety. That was what we did in the 17 flights over the past few weeks that we got out. We compare favorably and strongly to just about every other of our allied countries in terms of how strongly and actively Canadians work to get people out of Afghanistan to safety. And for the Canadians who remain, unfortunately, in Afghanistan, we will continue both to demand that the Taliban allow them to get out to safety, but also to work with international allies and regional partners to ensure that they're able to do that.